Now, one of the biggest questions of Arsenal's summer is what is happening with Thomas Partey. With a contract still not signed and recent reports saying he wants more money, which could see him leave, in this video we're going to talk about the #1 replacement for him, if this is to happen, being Lucien Agoume, and exactly why Arsenal should bring him in as the perfect replacement. So let's get into it. Now, first of all, of course, Thomas Partey is in a situation which we don't know what is happening. He still has yet to sign a contract, with that obviously ending in 2 weeks as of recording, but there is still optimism within the club that he will re-sign, which will probably be another year or 2 years on his time at the club, which means that we'll probably focus on better midfielders and younger midfielders in the future, which we will get into. However, Lucien Agoume has been reported to be the #1 target to replace him this summer if he is to leave, and I think it completely makes sense when you look at the makeup of Arsenal's team and the age and the amount of experience that he has already got and can bring to the team for the future. So I would be very happy with this signing. Now, Agoume, in terms of value and media coverage, has kind of been underrated throughout his career. He's had stints obviously playing for Inter Milan, barely, but went on loan in the Serie A. He's had stints in Liga 1, and now he's had a pretty good successful career at Sevilla, being one of their main men last season and actually playing the second most amount of games in the league within their squad, to being a major part of that team. He is seen as that more midfield destroyer type of player, which Arsenal arguably won't have with Partey not being there. He is someone that breaks up play, wins the ball brilliantly, and crunch on tackles when they're going in behind to win the ball back and progress with it going forward, which is something that Agoume is very good at doing. When you look at some of his tackle numbers and interception numbers, they are incredibly high. Not only because I think Sevilla give up a lot of possession, you will see they're about 10th in the Liga for possession had last year, so they have to win the ball back a lot rather than having it more than you would expect a team like Arsenal to. He is very good at closing gaps really quickly. He's quite a quick player within these tight areas and can be able to get onto loose balls and intercept very well, but he's also someone that will put a crunching tackle in if you need to on the recovery and run back really well to bring people down. There's another thing that he does where he gives away fouls quite a lot, but this is a thing that we have seen a lot of top teams use. Arsenal, City, if they do get their press broken, often they just bring the player down, pick up that yellow and move on. And knowing when to do that and when to not is also a very intelligent thing that we'll see from these type of midfielders. And to conclude on that, he is also someone that is in brilliant shape of winning duels. He wins an incredible amount of ground duels and is very physical in these sort of tight areas and these challenges. He's a very strong guy. He's about 6'2", so he is a big guy who has a lot of pace and can just smash into people. Obviously, this will have to be developed so he doesn't do it too often and doesn't ruin the team's performances like we had some players in the past do. But if this is enhanced right, he can win back and crunch on tackles and bring them legs in midfield, which I know we have been complaining about. Not only is he great on ground duels, but aerially he is fantastic. We spoke about his height, but he's got a very good jump as well, where he's alert to balls. And Partey, in my eyes, is someone that you really see lock into gear as a second ball player, as someone who will get there for knockdowns, and he will be there if the ball does fall into space. He is ready to pick the ball up. Agoume is a little bit more of an initiative player. He will be the guy going up to head the ball to win it back quickly in the first phase, and then to get the team up on the attack, which defensively I think can really help the team as well. Now, off the ball, I do think Arsenal will need someone that is that sort of real tackler and area coverer. Zubimendi coming in, and I do think he is a brilliant player using his intelligence to get these interceptions and get these certain teams to push off and get the ball in possession. But there's going to be games where even Zubimendi's not fit, or Rice can't play in defensive midfield, or we play different teams. And I think Agoume is one of them players you want to play against smaller teams, where he's a little bit more frantic, a little bit more willing to crunch on players to win the ball back quickly, and doesn't use it as intelligence as much, but uses sheer power and strength to win the ball back, which is one of the reasons why I kind of liked Partey in the team to come off the bench sometimes. I will also say that Agoume is going to come in to replace Thomas Partey. Partey, in my eyes, is not going to be the starter next season, so he doesn't need to play substantial minutes. He is 23 years old, and there's definitely a certain, maybe not rawness about him, but at least execution of his ideas isn't always the best done, and sometimes he ghosts a little bit, and that will have to be developed with more age and more experience within a good team, which I don't think he has had at Seville. And this is where I kind of go on to the on-the-ball things, because not only do Arsenal need someone that is going to break up play, crunch, recovery tackles, and get the ball back for the team, they need someone that is going to be quite an exceptional passer, at least going forward, and at least platforming other players to get into them areas. It's one of the reasons why Zubimendi was signed anyway. Now, I'm not saying Partey is a bad passer in any ways. Throughout throughout his career, he's been very good. I do think he has been less and less responsible of doing these deeper, brilliant passes, especially when Miles came in and Miles was that more carrier type. But we have seen how great he can be on this right-hand side, putting passes over the top. Although I do think his biases to the right side have hurt Arsenal in the past. Now, something that Partey does though with his passing is he kind of waits and has this ability to trick other players to thinking he's going to do one pass and sort of disguise another ball. It's always been something Partey's very good at. Sometimes I do think he kind of gets in his head right now and he spends too long on the ball and will give it away. And I think even his mistakes are linked to the fact that he does these sort of passes. And I think Agoumé is kind of the same sort of player. He has this ability with his passes to disguise them, which can be really good to get him behind, but sometimes he takes too long and can lose the ball, which is something we will have to try and improve. But I do think his passing range is ultimately a lot better. He's much more willing to actually go down the left-hand side more than the right sometimes, but he will usually spread his play out. And he can switch the ball brilliantly out wide if needed, but also play balls in between the channels. He has a nice difference between all of his passes and kind of understands when to use the passes when he needs to. And I think it's actually one of his best abilities at the player he is. And something he likes doing on the ball specifically is when people try to press him, he kind of pushes up a few steps into the midfield and then can put them balls into players who platform them. He's not someone that is going to make these insane 30-yard through balls, but he is someone that is going to help other players get into the pockets and move the team a lot quicker, when I do think these passes into them channels can help a lot. And although his passing stats probably aren't as incredible as a lot of defensive midfielders in top 5 leagues, and I think that's a lot down to the team, he does still do a lot of progressive passes. The carries that I was saying that are more like the defensive areas into that sort of midfield central area, and he'll push up a little bit, but he isn't someone that is necessarily going to run past the whole team. A bit like Partey in his prime, he doesn't really have that in his abilities. However, he is someone that will push up into these pockets, make these passes out wide or in behind if he needs to, and will spread the play up a lot more. I think if you put him next to someone like Rice, it could really make him better, because Rice will just carry it and move a lot of the channels in between that, and so will Miles, of course. And I think Agoumé can really play off of that and put balls into him quickly where he got that space so he can run into and create chances, which is something I think is quite key for Arsenal in the future. Now, while I profile him a little bit as a sitter, as someone that you're going to have in them defensive areas, kind of wait for things to happen, he can push up and make them headers if he needs to, but he most likely will stay there and wait for other people to do the work in midfield, and then he'll be like last line of defense before the actual defenders themselves. I do think he is actually a very versatile player, and how he's used for Sevilla is very weird. For Sevilla, sometimes on this right hand side, he is used to press a lot further forward. It's funny because he's actually played alongside people like Lokonga, who we obviously will know very well. And Lokonga isn't the best presser off the ball in my opinion. I don't know if this is why they've used Agoumé to kind of press a lot further forward, it might be, but you see him a lot in these right half channels, go right up against the defenders when they receive the ball and trying to make that first press happen. I've seen Sevilla do this a lot, and I think given his pace and his recovery ability and how physical he is at, like we said, bringing people down, that is probably why he's used there. And I do think he's a very intelligent player off the ball at finding these sort of passes and deciding when the tempo happens, and he's a great controller in that way. And I think they're trying to sort of get that into his off the ball style of pushing him forward. Now, I don't think I'll do this in the Prem. I don't think we need another press on that right hand side if Odegaard's going to be in there, or any attacking midfielder. Could help with maybe a Waneri in attacking midfield to give him that sort of ability to come deeper at least, and give Agoumé that sort of inherent chance to make the press, and Waneri not really have to do it as much. But I do think that's not really something Arsenal should do with him, and I actually think as a sitter, putting him in deeper areas would be the way to go. And if we are going to look at some of the concerns with him, I do think sometimes he kind of ghosts in games. He's not really always the best discipline in positioning off the ball when it comes to defending. Sometimes I think as this sitter role, and sometimes he is made to go a lot further forward, he kind of gets a little bit too confident, and I do think sometimes just making him calm things down, making him be in them defensive areas would be the best way for him to really get at them. And I do want to see him close down gaps that are going to be smaller by your positioning, not just being reliant on that pace to cover these big gaps, which is something I think we would have to look at overall. And there is going to be them same problems in possession as a Partey, but that's why I'm not really worried. The biggest issue I have with Partey right now is that he is still too casual sometimes on the ball. Sometimes he can make some incredible passes and really dictate and run through a couple of players and make that pass through, but sometimes he also just gets too in his head and takes too long to make decisions. I think Agoumé has the same sort of problems, and he is a lot younger and probably on a lot less wages, so it is a lot easier, I think, to get him into that adaptability, and also more importantly to deal with it within the squad. 31-year-old that's on over 200k a week, I don't think should be having the same problems if they are supposed to be a big part of this team. And I think if Arsenal want to build up in different ways than just his right-hand side, getting someone else in might be the best idea anyway, given how cheap he is in the market. I love how press resistant as well he is. He is so good when the ball is coming to him. There's people pressing him to go either way. His dribbling is not amazing, but it's kind of good for how big he is. A little bit like Partey, where he kind of does these like fake shotty things to go past players, and it actually ends up working really well. It's one of the things I've loved about Partey's play style a lot, because I think it's quite unique. Agoumé doesn't really have that same level, but I think he has a good enough level. Even his successful take-ons are pretty good for a midfielder, where I do think this can help. And while I do think Spanish football is quite slower than you're going to see some other leagues, I think Italy and Spain are slower than the Prem fundamentally. Maybe he will be better when he actually has more to do in games, and I think he definitely will be better with players around him who he can platform a lot more, and more importantly, a team that keeps the ball a lot more than they do. I think it's really hard to judge midfielders when they play for poor teams, same with Zubimendi in my opinion, and when you see him play for better teams, when they have more control of the ball, when the players around them are better and they can take their sort of creativity and make things happen with it, you start to see the real effect of someone like this in the team. And I think he's an intelligent player for a very good fee, which should be considered. Now, there's obviously other players I think people are talking about. Bouadi is one that everyone's talking about from Lille. Obviously, he's only 17. I think you have to get him on a pre-contract for next season or in January, so he's still super young. And he is a little bit more of an 8. He can be a sitter. I do think he's a bit lanky, so his physicality maybe isn't there right now that you would maybe want from him. But he is a brilliant, I'd say, carrier of the ball, brilliant runner with it as well. And he's an incredible player in press resistance. He can take players on easily under pressure and keep the ball no matter what. And I think in the final third, he's a little bit more creative. I think Agoumé has this sort of level in the final third to be very good, but that's not really what Arsenal care about too much. I think he will be there to help players make some slip through balls in there in the final third if we have enough pressure, but ultimately he needs to be there to recover and make tackles. And I think breaking up the play can really help someone like Rice do all of that carrying, and he can be the natural passer in there, which I do really like. Now, when looking at fees, I think it is very important, and that's kind of why this guy should definitely be considered. We know that we can't spend too much money on the midfield positions this summer, because obviously we've still got to focus on the forward areas, and the prices keep rising every week. I obviously think Carlos Baleba is probably the best midfielder in the world in the next coming years. I think he's an incredible talent for Brighton, and when I look at him, he gives me that Partey-esque, but also an incredible player in the final third. Has great creativity as well, where he can literally just run past teams, unlike Agoumé, with his powerful running style. But I do think Agoumé could be a little bit of a smaller version of him, especially in someone that breaks up play and has a good passing ability. And although he is a defensive midfielder by trade, he is much more of them central midfielders you now see, much more of them passes than just someone that is going to sit there and tackle all the time. And I think Agoumé has a good level to that to be compared to these players, and for a much cheaper fee. And that is the thing. Sevilla last year, I think, bought him from Inter Milan for around £4 to £5 million, and his value is only around 15 to 20 mil because they don't really have too much money going for the club right now. So if you could get him for around £20 million, he's on a lot less wages than Partey. He's on about 40k a week, while Partey's on over 200 and might want even more than that. So if you can get him on a cheaper wage as well, I think the deal ends up being a better deal than keeping Partey for another year. Now, there's going to be other midfielders available next year. We talk about Bouadi. Baleba's probably going to be available next year. Maybe an Andre Santos, who is someone that is a little bit more central midfielder type, but I do like him and think he can break up play very well and run with it as well. These players we know that Arsenal have been linked to at certain points over the last couple of months, so it's quite clear that is probably the direction you want to go. And given the Partey is probably not going to be that much of a starter this season if the players stay fit, Agoumé is a player that can come in and be the same sort of ability. Now, is he going to have the most potential in the world? Probably not. He is 23. It's taken him a long time to even start for big teams like a Seville before. But I do think that is not really what we need. We need a backup. It's all about padding out the team. And we speak about it when we talk about the defenders the other day in the shorts. Sometimes these cheaper deals should not be looked away from because you can get great value out of them. I think if Tomiyasu weren't injured for 16 mil, we got brilliant value out of him. And I would like to see us make this sign if we cannot agree a deal with Partey in the next coming weeks. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it as always, and I'll see you in the next one.